All video games of the competitive scene face a never-ending challenge of balance. It's a perpetual dilemma where you have to somehow achieve two mutually divergent outcomes at the same time, that being maintaining some semblance of a stable meta in order for players to feel adequately rewarded for the time and effort invested into it, while also keeping the game ever-changing so as not to incur stagnation and eventually exhaustion. It's a fine line between too much change and too little. Sadly, attempting to find a perfect balance may be close to unfeasible in light of the nature of competitive games fostering animosity towards metas more than acceptance. Smash Ultimate is on the precipice of such an outcome. Having been documented and discussed time and time again in recent months, the game is beginning to enter the final stages of its exploration. On one hand, the amount of time spent learning and optimizing has led to major breakthroughs in fighters previously written off as unviable, but on the other hand, players are, understandably, beginning to grow frustrated with the handful of cast members that were cemented in the upper echelon of tier lists. Now, it's more likely for players to not be happy with top tiers in a video game than the inverse, and this definitely isn't the first time in the Smash Bros. Franchise where people have been dissatisfied with how things turned out, given the twilight of Smash 4 and the majority of Brawl. Why does this keep happening though? Why is it almost as if Smash is destined to always have an unpleasant lineup of top tiers? Today we'll be discussing the problem with Smash Ultimate's best characters and why this outcome happens so consistently. A good starting point for this video would be to first understand what makes a character top tier in the first place, like how is Roy better than Marth or how is Fox better than Falco? Fundamentally, it comes down to two primary factors: 1. Options, and 2. Interactions. Those are the two hallmark elements that govern the relative performance of a character. Beginning with the first aspect of options, obviously the more favorable assortment of stats and tools you have, the better you perform against other characters. For most people, stats can be broken down into rudimentary things: ground speed, airspeed, attack range, frame data, damage, kill power, so on and so forth. But options go far beyond just that. There are so many more things that comprise options. For instance, neutral tools, having ways to exert meaningful pressure on your opponent without exposing yourself in return. For some characters, even if they have range or speed, they may not have as good of a neutral pressure as those attributes would imply. Another aspect would be recovery options. There's a measurable number of characters who possess great recoveries if we look at it purely from distance traveled. Joker's Wings of Rebellion boasts incredible distance coverage, but is famously considered a downgrade compared to his standard tether, as it can easily be punished via any half-decent two-framing option. Conversely, there may be characters with poor distance coverage but have many ways in which they can return to stage, giving them deceptively better recovery than one would expect. Last example would be escape options. Characters may be fast but not have the means to shake off enemy pressure, thus rendering their otherwise fantastic speed irrelevant on account of them being trapped in the corner or forced behind shield. A good case study being Greninja, whose out of shield options, or lack thereof, can make it difficult for him to fight back when being pressured. As you can see, there's a lot more beneath the surface than just being fast or being strong. Several mid-tiers are known for having frankly overpowered moves, but the absence of other forms of options is what makes them less practical than others, who might not do as much damage or be as fast but have more options. The second aspect though is what determines the relative healthiness of options: interactions. Those of you who follow Vars 1 may have heard me say this before, but seldom is it ever the mechanic or property itself that determines whether or not it's a problem, rather what the opponent can do in response to it, if they can do anything at all. You can have an attack that literally one-shots you, but if it has 50 years of startup or requires that you stand basically right next to your opponent, it can be played around. It's why Little Mac, despite having a move that can erase you off the map as early as 20%, is one of the worst characters in the game, because the majority of the roster has the means to play around it, whether avoiding him all game or throwing something safe at him that gets rid of it. In contrast, what makes a move like Spin Dash a major headache is that few characters, if any, have an answer to it, allowing Sonic to get away with spamming it without a second thought. The first 5 frames of the attack are unchallengeable. He can dash right through even the strongest projectiles and attacks in the game if timed correctly. On top of that, even if you successfully block it, it's positive on shield, meaning Sonic is able to act 6 to 11 frames faster than you can, or in other words, you can't punish Spin Dash. When also factoring in the however many ways he can mix up the movement or cancel it, and that's when you have something that breaks the fine balance between options and interactions, in that Sonic has so many options with this move, both from the move itself and what you can do after, while the opponent has very few or potentially no answers to stop you from or punish you for doing it. The more options a character has, and the less ways you're able to respond to it, the better a character performs overall. The interaction aspect is what separates a top tier with a good design from a top tier with a bad one. It is possible for someone to have strong options in one area while being countered in others, which is how a character should be designed. No matter how strong they are, there should be weaknesses or deficiencies that most if not all characters can easily exploit if the opportunity presents itself. There's no better example of that than Fox. When played optimally, Fox is some of the highest DPS and offensive pressure known to man, more than Kazuya, more than Sonic, more than Steve. But the burden of execution falls on the Fox player to make it happen, since any misstep can result in him exploding just as quickly as he can explode them. Burden of execution is one of the universal forms of balance in any game. The more the onus is put on the player to make stuff happen, the higher the skill floor and ceiling is in light of having to put yourself at risk to achieve the desired outcome. Sure, Fox, Roy, or Cloud may get away with perhaps more than players are comfortable with, but the need for them to exercise proper judgment and actually think before they go in is what makes them feel less oppressive to play against than the likes of Kazuya, Steve, Game & Watch, and Sonic, which brings me to the central point of this video. The Smash Bros. Franchise notoriously fails at finding a healthy middle ground between the privileges afforded to a character and the potential weaknesses they may have. Even while the game is being actively updated during 2019 and 2020, Sakurai and his team aren't exactly known for their knowledge in competitive balance, mostly because they don't keep all fighters on the same power scaling, especially with the new additions. In an ideal world, every character would have the same things. For the sake of argument, 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses. What would then determine if one character is stronger than the other is what combination of strengths and weaknesses they have. Such is not the case though. Some fighters have 9 strengths and 1 weakness, while others have 1 strength and 9 weaknesses. Mind you, it can be difficult to comprehend how valuable a strength or weakness is given their values change from situation to situation. In one matchup, having bad recovery can be a lot more crippling, while in another it's not as consequential. But that is what makes Ultimate's top tiers all the more aggravating. If I could summarize the likes of Steve, Game & Watch, and Sonic in a single sentence, it would be this. They can do so much and get away with so much without having to do that much. The issue with these characters is that conceptually, the amount of time and effort invested into them produces a net reward far higher than is justified in relation to the same effort being put into other characters. I'm not saying any random dude tour can pick up Steve and start winning locals, you still have to put in the work. But what I am saying though is that a player who achieves 95% of Steve or Sonic's capacity will get more than someone who achieves 95% of Corrin's capacity or Bayonetta's capacity. Top players will effortlessly trash a 2-2 Steve or Sonic player, but when there's someone who is just as good as them, the character difference can and does matter substantially. I'm actually going to leave Steve and Sonic alone for a moment and talk about the new kid on the block, Mr. Game & Watch. With the rise of Mia, players are beginning to realize just how much they underestimated him when they ranked him bottom tier at the very start of Ultimate. Game & Watch epitomizes the option and interaction dynamic I talked about earlier, honestly more than Steve and Sonic I dare say. So many of his attacks can do a lot of things for minimal effort while having very few ways in which the opponent can stop him from doing it. Opening with his smash attacks, up smash is frequently spammed in neutral because the invincibility, ridiculous kill power, and safety on shield makes it so the risk of interacting with him while he does it far outweighs the reward. His down smash effectively has no weakness. When fully spaced even at -15, most characters can't punish it. If you get hit by the sweet spot, you basically die at 50. If you get hit by the sour spot, it sends at quite possibly the worst angle possible, especially with bad DI. Oh, and also, if you get hit by it while you're in the air, it sends you straight up and kills you at like 100 anyway. So no matter what you do, if you get hit by this, you're f***ed. Game & Watch down smash covers both sides in himself and is fully disjointed, making it one of the safest down smashes on shield. It does so much while simultaneously giving you few if any ways to stop him from doing it or punish him for doing it. These privileges extend to many, and I emphasize many of his other moves. Up air is without question the best up air in the game. You can't punish it due to it being like plus 20 on shield. It's one of the farthest reaching up airs in the game. It's a disjointed multi-hitter, which means even if you down air or try to attack one of the hits, the other ones will still connect. Even though it's a projectile, there's no point in reflecting it since the attack wears off before it recoils back to Game & Watch anyway. This move is juggling incarnate, and once again, there's very little the opponent can do in response to it. All they can do is not be directly above him, or at least try not to be. Having so many moves of the same nature that give him far greater of an advantage over you makes it so the safest course of action you have against him is to not interact, which is the worst form of counterplay. So on my League channel, I have a series called Badly Designed Abilities, which now that I think of it, maybe I should do it for Vars 3 also. I digress though. Most of the time, you can infer if an ability is badly designed if the best way to handle it is to not handle it. PvP games are all about interactions. Why is it so fun watching Leo play Joker? Because it's full of interaction, full of exchanges, explosive punish games, reads, and crazy callouts. There's a lot of thought, mental awareness, presence of mind, and execution behind playing Joker because of how fast Leo plays someone who can easily get punished. I know Joker has some pretty lame-ass moves like down gun and whatnot, but generally he's regarded as one of those quote-unquote top tiers that actually have to work for their wins. Ultimate's best characters all suffer from the same issue. The best way to play against them is, ironically, to not play against them at all. Smash 4 Bayo can one-shot you off a single interaction, so why in your right mind would you ever go in against her? Having a touch of death alone doesn't make or break a character. You have tons of them in Ultimate like Ice Climbers and Luigi. But unlike Kazuya or Steve, who can also screw you over a single interaction, you can play the walling game against those other characters and punish a stubby range and or predictable disadvantage. Trying to do that against someone like Steve is just flat out impossible. Not only does he have frame data on par with some of the fastest characters in the game, and not only does he have damage output and kill power that makes even Heavy Slick pathetic, but he has options, lots of options, for just about any situation. He might be the slowest character in the game, but he has burst movement options that, on top of being very fast and effective at repositioning, 2 of them are literally projectile smash attacks. So not only can he recover or escape juggles, but he can straight up kill you for trying to juggle or edge guard him in the first place. Alternatively, he could just place blocks down and chill in midair for as long as he has materials, which is basically forever because he can mine on top of the block he places down. At the very least, for characters like Peach, she has to come down eventually. Steve doesn't even have to. No sane person will try to chase after him from that far above when there's Anvil and minecart they have to worry about. Even on stage, there's not much you can do against him. If he builds a wall, much less a house, it seals off virtually all avenues of approach you can take. Against opponents like Samus and the Belmonts, it's a 50-50 guess on whether you'll approach from the ground or the air, whether diagonally or from above, but Steve turns a 50-50 into a 99-1, where all he has to do is cover the only option you have to approach him, effectively ensuring he wins if you do. And if he places a wall behind himself, even if he's at kill percent, if you hit him, he can tech the wall and strike right back. Therefore, the safest way to play against him is to just not interact with him. People were disparaging Tweak for standing still and watching Aquila mine and place a 3-high wall for 5 minutes straight. But if he tries to go in, Aquila mathematically is guaranteed to emerge the victor from any neutral interaction because Steve has dozens of options while at the same time eliminating most if not all of his opponent's options. Sonic, Steve, Kazuya, Game & Watch, and to a lesser extent Min, Aegis, and Sneak aren't frustrating because they're strong. They're frustrating because they can forcibly stack the deck and checkmate you, devolving an otherwise interactive engaging display of skill into a game of Minesweeper. Only 90% of the board is full of mines. The opponent has to put in so much effort and continuously put in that effort without stopping to overcome those obstacles, begging the question, is it even worth trying? Evidently it's not. That's why these characters are so damaging to the game. Not only is it unenjoyable to play against them, but it's unenjoyable to watch. Whether playing or spectating, people love interactions. That's the whole reason we play video games. There is no greater satisfaction than being faced with a challenge and, through hard work, practice, and creativity, overcoming it. And despite what some may think, they love it when the challenge, in this case being their opponent, also pushes back. That's why PvP games are some of the most popular. Things get boring when once you beat them the first time, you can beat them every subsequent time. People want to be challenged and continuously challenged. But there's a difference between something being challenging and something being suffocating. Ultimate's top tiers make the game suffocating, not challenging. To reiterate, I'm not saying these characters are infallible and that skill doesn't play a part. To this day, players are slowly but surely learning their matchups and doing all they can to push through in spite of their overwhelming disadvantage. But just as they're getting better and better, so too are the Game & Watch, Steve, and Sonic players. Only for every 1 step forward you take, they take 3 steps forward. It's like gambling at a casino. The house always wins, meaning in the long run you're guaranteed to lose, so why even bother playing? The more I think about it, the more I wish we had one patch, one last patch, one final round of numbers adjustments could make this game so much better. If the meta's best characters were Joker, Roy, Wolf, Fox, and so on, even though I'm sure players will inevitably find things to complain about them, based on how we feel about them now, it would make for a much more enjoyable experience because at the very least, it's an interactive one. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my stance on it, or do you think there's a different problem with them entirely? Feel free to share in the comments down below. That's going to be it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, it would be great if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.